Hello, I'm Andie Sophia Fontaine, the editor here at Iceland Review. I'm here at Östervöllur Square, and today on Iceland News Review, we're going to talk about Arctic foxes, we're going to talk about solar panels in Iceland, and later on, we're going to have a little surprise here at this location, so let's get into it. So just a little while ago, it was raining while the sun is out, and different regions of the United States and Canada, maybe even other countries, have different sayings about what's happening when it's raining when the sun's out. In my region of the United States, we call it something that I don't really want to repeat on this video without us getting demonetized, but in Iceland, this is simply called the weather. Today's top story is about the changing life expectancy in Iceland. Iceland is a country that is well known for having very long-lived people. That's often associated with living in colder climes. And Iceland's life expectancy had been gradually increasing year by year. That was until 2022 to 2023, when the life expectancy of men decreased by 0.4 years, and women, their life expectancy decreased by 0.1, so that the average life expectancy now of your average Icelandic man is 80.7 years, and 83.8 years for women. In case you were curious, Iceland is actually 15th in the world for life expectancy. In the number one spot is Monaco at 86.3 years. So I guess spending all the time at the casino doesn't really shorten your life necessarily if you gamble responsibly, followed by San Marino and Andorra. So as I've said many times before, when it comes to the earth sciences, it's a bit inexact in that it's impossible to say, oh, well, the volcano is going to erupt at this day, at this time, at this hour. And sometimes earth scientists will slightly disagree with one another, sometimes greatly disagree with one another. An example of slight disagreement would be the eruption that's expected to happen in the Svartsengi area of Reykjanes Peninsula in southwest Iceland. Now, in the last reporting that I did, I talked about how there was a high probability of an eruption happening either north of Grindavik or even within Grindavik itself, and that there would be little to no warning about this happening. Well, volcanologist and a professor at the Faculty of Earth Sciences at the University of Iceland, Þorvaldur Þórðarson, who we've interviewed on a couple of occasions, we'll have a link to that in the description, he doesn't believe that there's going to be an eruption within Grindavik itself. He considers this an unlikely scenario. Why? Well, he believes that the eruption is most likely to occur where it's occurred in all times previous, which is Svartsengi, which is a bit north of Grindavik. Now, there was one exception to that, of course, and that was the January 14th eruption of Hagafell, but he doesn't consider it very likely that lava is going to come pouring out of the ground at Grindavik, which is probably of great relief to the people of Grindavik. And in terms of how much warning there would be for this, people have said there'll be little to no warning, maybe as little as half an hour in terms of when an eruption's happening in Svartsengi. Þorvaldur pointed out a very obvious thing that this should not be great cause for concern because they're not letting anybody in the eruption area anyway. So there'll probably be very little need for concern where that is. But as I said, earth sciences are very inexact. And so the eruption could come up literally anywhere within the next 2 to 3 weeks in that area, and we will keep you informed. Yes, Iceland is well known for its green energy, mostly in the form of geothermal power and hydropower. And when it comes to other forms of sustainable energy, you might be thinking wind is a very plentiful resource in Iceland, and it is. And in fact, there have been some trial wind farms that have been set up in the country. What you might not guess is solar power would be a very viable type of project, given the fact that it rains about 200 days of the year in this country. However, the National Energy Authority is now accepting applications where they will pay down 50% of the cost for people to install solar panels. Now, they recognize that adding solar panels to the national grid is not really a viable strategy. Rather, they're looking for people who are not connected to the main electricity grid, They're looking for people who are paying rural electricity rates, which tend to be much higher. And they're looking for people who tend to rely on electrical heating, especially in the winter times. Now, it may come as a surprise to you in a country that prides itself on geothermal heating, but there are in fact communities especially in the Northwest, which in the wintertime may experience brownouts or even blackouts where they'll have to turn on diesel generators to generate power. And the National Energy Authority is now accepting applications for people in those three circumstances to be able to put solar panels up. And I think it's a very ambitious project, and we'll see how that goes. We very much laud the fast response of our rescue workers and construction workers in this country in the event of a natural disaster. Excuse me. And most people connect that to earthquakes and volcanoes, but there's another phenomenon that happens actually pretty frequently in Iceland, especially in the summertime: glacial flooding. This is sometimes connected to volcanic activity, like if there's a volcano under a glacier and the magma begins to rise kind of close to the surface, it might melt some of the ice. But oftentimes it's just the presence of it being warmer that causes glacial water to melt and pool and then burst through. And exactly that happened last Saturday at Mýrdalsjökull, which is in South Iceland. Glacial flooding began, which overflowed the river Skálm. And what's important about this is that Route 1, which is the highway that circles the entire country, became flooded. It did not wash out the bridge over the river, fortunately. Excuse me. It did not wash out the bridge over the river, fortunately, but it did wash out part of the road on the other side of the bridge. And as a result of this, they had to close Route 1. Kind of a big deal, right? Well, rescue workers and construction workers and engineers got to work immediately, and by that evening, they'd opened up the road again. So if you've ever traveled Route 1 and maybe run into an occasional pothole or some parts that were not really well developed, bear in mind that we're doing our very best to keep that highway open, because that highway is priority number one for us, as demonstrated by the response to that glacial flood. Next, we're going to talk about foxes, specifically Arctic foxes, which are Iceland's only native land mammal. Might come as a surprise to you, but like the sheep are imported, even the reindeer are imported, but Arctic foxes have always been here. Now, the Arctic fox population has been of concern to people for a very long time. For many years, they were hunted because they were considered a pest by farmers who are trying to protect their livestock from them. And the largest stocks of foxes that you will find are in the Northwest. And an extensive study that was conducted by the Icelandic Institute of National History found that this population is in fact rebounding, which is fantastic. And there's a couple reasons for that. And one of the most interesting details about this story that I found is that, like, normally the foxes will feed on nesting birds in that area. However, there had been a decline in the bird population. So what does a hungry fox do? They started hunting fish instead. That's right, they had been going through seaweed and fish that were along the shores, and there was even evidence that mother foxes were teaching their younglings how to hunt fish and seaweed off the shores of Northwest Iceland, which is an incredible comeback tale. And so it looks like the Arctic foxes are maybe on the rebound, which is a very fortunate thing for all of us. Okay. For our final story here in Iceland News Review, today is the inauguration of the 7th President of the Republic of Iceland, Halla Tómasdóttir. Last June, when elections took place, it was absolutely historic because there were not one, not two, but 3 women contending for the top spot. Apart from Halla Tómasdóttir, there was also Halla Lóadóttir and former Prime Minister and former chair of the Left Green Party, Katrín Jakobsdóttir. And it was a pretty tense race in the final month, but in the very beginning, like in early spring of this year, Halla was polling at around 5% or so. But then she started rocketing up the polls, and then the results came in, and she had won. And so today is the inauguration of our president. And this is a very public event. You can see there's a big screen TV up here where the general public gets to watch the events. But generally speaking, it begins here. This is the Reykjavík Cathedral with a mass. There's a service that's held there. And then folks walk on over to Parliament, where the president is formally sworn in. And then she will appear on that balcony there and address the nation. It's a very historic event. I'm happy to be a part of it. And that's all we have for you today at Iceland News Review. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Be good to each other.
Góðir Íslendingar, það birti upp og á þessum fallega degi langar okkur að minnast fósturjarðarinnar og biðjum ykkur að taka undir fjórfalt húrra, Ísland lifi, húrra, 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 húrra!
Eller mezelf.